let's get back at it. Let's talk about some teams who are on the hunt for some points.
Yeah.
Lisa,
Yeah.
I think when we did our preview, we referenced all of these teams right now that we're going to talk about. We're going to recap Kansas City Current versus Houston Dash first. When we were talking about these two teams, I think this was one of those games where we were like, we don't know, maybe we want to go lean into the draw for this one, because sometimes as you start heading towards that halfway point of a regular season, you have teams that are starting to separate themselves a little bit, and you've got teams that are still struggling to figure things out. And with Houston and the Current heading into this match, they were some, bottom half table teams. And for the Houston Dash specifically, I know we had some, I don't know if I would call them concerns, but
Mhm.
we had some curiosities around
Yeah.
at this point, like what we're what we've seen from the attacking trio in Houston versus the kind of output that has happened from them to this point. So it's interesting to sort of to note that Ordonez was out for a couple weeks, and we saw Ebony Salmon score. Salmon has been rotated. Sanchez has, I think, of the three, kind of been the
I'd
more
say the most consistent. Yeah.
yeah, of the trio of them. But this sort of felt like a win for Houston, that they just kind of wanted to ensure that, like, they wanted to ensure that they can pull off a win themselves. And for Kansas City Current, it just absolutely leaves even more questions than you
Yeah.
had going into this week.
It's like a dagger in the heart to watch Kansas City right now, because they're struggling. They're really struggling. They started the season losing 3 straight, and then they won 3, and that honestly due to just the coaching shakeup. They got rid of Matt Potter, and they had Caroline Huablom step into the interim head coach position. And sometimes that shakeup can be really good for a team, and it was for KC. They picked up 3 straight wins. It looked like, wow, this team is rolling. Then they switched their formation. And Herrera wanting to try different formations with a back line, and then at home against this Houston side, a team where they picked up their very first win against Houston in the Challenge Cup. Kansas City is back to a 5-back. So it's a 5-3-2, which is incredibly defensive, but also really wide when you have those 2 wingback players. And for Herrera, it was Haley Mace and Izzy Rodriguez being those wingback players that look to really occupy a lot of space in the flanks. And frankly, Maria Sanchez owned the flank,
Yep.
not the Kansas City players where they were running up and down. Houston they got the start with Sanchez, Ordonez up top, Ebony Salmon on the bench, and then Michelle Alozzi also in that front 3 line. And we got to see Cassie Miller in goal for Kansas City. That was a question mark for us heading into it when we did our preview. Were we going to see 80 French or Cassie Miller? But Houston, they started to gain possession. I mean, the Dash really grew into this game on the road in Kansas City at Children's Mercy Park. Houston are very good away from home. That's something that they have in them as a team. They had it last year. They're carrying it through to this year. They can win on the road. And as this game continued to go on and the minutes tick by, Houston continued to gain possession, especially towards the end of that first half. And that's exactly when their opening goal came in the 42nd minute on a Ordonez goal. Her first goal of the year, not from the penalty kick spot.
Look, but I loved it though. I know we're kind of like, okay, it's week 9, but you know what? In fairness to Ordonez, it took her a little bit of time to get going in her rookie year as well. But I loved this goal, man.
Oh,
like
my gosh.
Her positioning, between the defender and this, I love it's. You know what it was for me? I'm just gonna be real. It was a total FU goal. It was just like, you are gonna just like make sure you get this ball in the back of the net. It was like, I'm toe poke it and get there no matter what. Like, I'm fighting too hard for this goal. It is going to the back.
It was another bullying goal in a good way. I mean, it was a complete team build up, the way that Houston organizationally shifted the ball from one side of the field to the other in such swift movement. Alozzi gets the ball, and she's the one that initiates the big switch all the way to Sanchez on the far left side. And then Sanchez is her bread and butter, clipping it in, chipping it right into Ordonez. It's a really cheeky pass into her. And Ordonez uses her body, her physicality. She turns Soto, the defender of Kansas City, bullies her way into the box a little bit like Sophia Jakobsen, turns her and just buries this one in the back of the net. It was a really good goal for Ordonez to get. I think that's a big confidence booster for her, for Houston moving forward.
Maybe something to look at as Kansas City is at this point. It's like, okay, they're down a goal, they're playing from behind officially, right? So maybe the timing of these goals is something that stood out for me. You got Ordonez with this bully goal, right, that we're referring to just before halftime, and then we've got Prysak or Didasco linking up with Prysak for essentially the go-ahead goal to make this game 2-0. And this one occurs just about 10 minutes into the second half, so it's like there's not a lot of time here. There wasn't a lot of time that we saw, at least from Kansas City, to sort of see any adjustments that they made kind of stick. I mean, we saw an early substitution into the half, Michelle Cooper and Kaiser. So we get to see maybe a little bit of adjustment. Is like, okay, maybe there's going to be some more kind of attacking minded play here to try to get some different looks, but there's just not enough time to even see if that sticks, because here come the dash in the 54th minute, and then they get this second goal, and then it just was like just not lack. I don't want to say lack of effort, because that's not what it is, but it almost just sort of felt like lack of ideas for Kansas City to try to really turn this corner against the Dash at home, of all places. You're the host in this one. Good crowd, good energy. Lisa, when we previewed this game, we talked a little bit about obviously the struggles that this team has gone through over their last now 9 weeks. And when we were in the previews, we were talking about the struggles during the last 8 weeks. And we noted that some of the reporting out of training camps and how Quablon was like, I want to see more effort, from the team. And we talked about, like, is that like a motivating
how do you
tactic?
feel as a player if your coach is like, I need more effort from you?
It's like, oh, we want to be attacking, we want to do this, but we need to see this. And it's like, how is the team going to respond to that? And I don't know if that actually rolled over into a motivating performance, essentially, into this game. And that's, again, it's like, you're at home, so maybe it's like you're not on the road. Maybe you're looking for other things to motivate you. This was not one of those things.
And I think in terms of, like, I kind of understand where Quablon's coming from, because Houston gets their second goal in the 54th minute, a corner kick. Ali Prysak, who's actually back for Houston playing, she started in the center back role. She's on the back post of the corner kick and heads it back in. This is what I mean. We had a lot of those types of goals: crosses, corner kicks, back post headers this weekend. And that's how Ali Prysak gets the go-ahead, to double the lead for Houston over Kansas City. And at that moment, Kansas City looked shocked. They looked depleted. They looked like head in hands. We can't do this. It silenced Kansas City a little bit, which is probably where Caroline Quablon's coming from, or she needs them to not focus so much on the scoreline and focus on how well the other team is doing, but what her own team and players can do well, and try to get one back. They're missing that, like, spicy kick that they had last year as this, like, underdog mentality. They don't have as much swagger this year. Kansas City, that is. Now, we did get to see Kristen Hamilton step into the match for a couple more minutes. She's slowly building up her minutes. We got about 30 out of her. I'm hoping that continues to grow.
The silver linings portion of it all, right?
Right.
Also something that we referenced last week. We were curious if we were going to see those minutes increase this weekend, and we did. We did get to see that from Kristen Hamilton, and I'm sure a lot of folks at this point are like, just wait till we get some of these players back and watch out. And I get that. But Debinha's been back. Debinha's been playing with this team.
She didn't look great.
Vanessa Bernardo has been on the pitch. These are two of your big three free agent signings, and now we've got another week of Kristen Hamilton, getting back into the mix and chopping it up with the team. It's just like I said, I think again, for me, it's not so much maybe lack of effort, but it's lack of ideas and cohesion at this moment. And I don't know if this is one of those games that this team can to take a look at and try to build off of, because it's like you're maybe, what are the question marks? What are the things that you are? What are the good things that you did in this game that you do want to build off of? And I think they're going to go through some tape this week, and maybe it's going to be a little tough to maybe find some of those things.
I think they need a bit more solid of a game plan, Kansas City. They can't just rely on the creativity of Debinha, because she wasn't that creative in this game against Houston. She didn't have that much space or time on the ball. It took her a while to get into the game. There's a lot of question marks there. A lot of question marks, but a big win for Houston on the road, picking up these 3 points, goals from Ordonez and Prysock, and big for Ordonez. Really big
for the Dash. Big points for them. Another team probably happy to get some points and a win. In general, the Chicago Red Stars picking up their first win in over a month.
Wow.
Doing it against Orlando Pride, a 1-0 win, where they also snapped the Pride's unbeaten streak as well. What a game, Lisa. Could you believe it? Could you believe it?
No, honestly, I'm so happy for Chicago. Frankly, like, I am so happy. When we did our preview, we literally were like, okay, so Chicago's going to lose. Now let's talk about Orlando. Like, let's talk about something else. And they didn't. They pick up this point. I mean, insane. The way that Chicago set up their formation with a 3-4-3, it looked really centrally, like, focused, and like they weren't going to try to use the width of the field as much, which when you look at Orlando and Seb Hines, they have some players in those wide areas that can dominate a little bit. So I was a little bit surprised to see that. I mean, it wasn't the best game from Chicago. They're very lucky that they are walking away with 3 points and a win and a shutout at this point. Alyssa Neaher, one of the players that heading into this game, she only needed a handful of saves to become the all-time saves leader in the NWSL. And she very quickly surpassed that and then decided to just level up. Alyssa Neaher saved the entire game for Chicago. She played lights out, and we haven't seen that from Alyssa Neaher in a while. I've talked to you about how, as if she's our number one goalkeeper for the United States heading into the World Cup, I was a little worried. She didn't look to be playing her best soccer. That all goes away after this match against Orlando. I mean, incredible job by Alyssa Neaher. Orlando should have won this game. I'm going to be frank.
Look, I think Chicago looked a little bit more comfortable having 4 in the back in this game. I think that's what it came down to. I think they looked real good having 4 in the back and having Casey Kruger even wider at this point. It was at this point in the season, it was a real get out there and try some stuff energy. And I think the shift in center back pairing and Milazzo and Davidson had some promising things, but also had some shaky moments as well. I think, again, one of those things where you're trying some stuff and maybe there's going to be those kind of nervy moments, right? But Alyssa Neaher just sort of feeding off of the game, really, I think, in front of her. But Kruger, essential to this game winner, builds up in the attack for Chicago, sends this beautiful rainbow of a cross into the box, and it connects with Yuki on the far post, and it just it happened in the 22nd minute, and it's almost like that's why I asked you if you could believe it, Lisa, because not only did they get the game winner, they scored early-ish in the first half, and then had to kind of play with a lead. It's something that they haven't had the opportunity to do in quite some time.
I know, frankly, I was a little bit shocked because as this game unfolded, I agree. Chicago looked much better with 4 in the back and how they were playing. But they were still giving the ball away in the midfield. The midfield is still a location on the field where Chicago struggled. They pushed Yuki Nagasato higher up the field to create more offensive pressure. And it worked. That's who got the goal off the Casey Kruger ball into the box, but it left massive holes in the midfield without Yuki Nagasato there. And then you look at the stats a little bit. Chicago had 2 shots. 2 shots in the first half.
Can you believe it?
2 shots, 2 on target. One of them finds the back of the net. Chicago had 0 shots in the second half. Not just on target, shots in general. 0 in the second half. Orlando Pride, on the other hand, 19 shots, 6 of them on frame. It was insane. Orlando's expected goals were nearly 2 at the end of this game. They should have had at least 1. And Alyssa Neaher thanking her post, thanking her crossbar, thanking her defenders in front of her, and just giving herself a pat on the back because she had a lights out game. The fact that Chicago did not get a single shot off in the second half and it still won
so
this
wild.
game.
I keep
It's the
saying
most
it,
Chicago thing that we've ever seen.
I keep saying, I keep saying it. Can you believe it? And you look at the numbers and you're like, no, I can't.
Against all odds.
Yeah, 19 shots for Orlando compared to the 2. Yeah, no, it's definitely tough. Look, for Orlando, they went in with all the momentum, right, into this week. We both had them picked in this game. They've been playing some good soccer. One of these teams that we are referring to, and we're saying that there are teams out there that are kind of figuring some things out and putting it together, and it's really about maybe putting it together at the right time. So maybe this is one of those setbacks, unlike we're talking about Kansas City and Houston Dash. Maybe this is one of those games for Orlando where they're going to go back and look at some things and they're like, actually, there's a lot of good things here that we can build off of.
There were. I think Orlando is just frustrated that they couldn't find the back of the net, and that's the beauty of the game, right? That you can have all these chances, and as a defensive side, you get lucky and you rely a lot on your goalkeeper, and that's what Chicago did. And Orlando is probably going to be kicking themselves because they didn't get to capitalize on some of those awesome opportunities that they had to find the back of the net. But I mean, big for Chicago. It's like, it's hilarious. This is so NWSL that this happened.
Look, listen, you like it. I love it. At the rate that this season has been going, I'll take it.